It's 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. It's time for a Godless sermon. Don't mind that my former office is dirty. I am back in Utah County. We'll talk about that maybe. Let's sermonize. Welcome to the Church of Korihor. We're a spiritual community for godless people. Yes, we are a real church.
Come take my hand. Come join our strike. From Boston shot to dawn's early light. From Lexington to Tripoli, our fathers died. The Union to see. A common voice, a common fight, a brighter tomorrow. However dark the night, it's the Union that raised our banner. It's the Union, the future's hammer. It's the Union that made you and me. It's the Union that makes us free. Immigrants, natives and slaves, we fought each other. The Union to save. From Gettysburg to Normandy, we forged a world without slavery. From Rust Belt to Hollywood, shoulder to shoulder, right where we stood. It's the Union that raised our banner. It's the Union, the future's hammer. It's the Union that made you and me. It's the Union that makes us free. It's the Union that raised our banner. It's the Union, the future's hammer. It's the Union that made you and me. It's the Union that makes us free. Makes us free. If we all strike, Joe Hill survives. They won't break us. Stand side by side, I'll stand with you. Come strike with me, and our union will make us free.
Well, I love it. Welcome to Godless Sermon again today. It is a beautiful Sunday morning here in America. As long as you are not a person or you aren't thinking about persons. I'm going to show you guys something. I don't know how many of you, like me, are big fans of TikTok. But one of the things I got into a perhaps unhealthy habit of adding to my algorithm on TikTok is the hashtag crash out. Those of us from a previous generation, and most of us are. Crash out is the way people say that they're going to vulnerably put themselves on the internet, crying and panicking about the desperation of their economic situation or of their situation in general. In a moment, we're going to go over some. I'm going to show you some of those. And don't worry, we're going to bring up the tone to be as optimistic as we can be, because I am frustrated. I am angry, generally. But I am also, for a pessimist, very optimistic right now about about how our future looks, and the changes that I am making, trying to be agile and shape the future of what our godless community looks like and what we're going to be doing. Today, I am announcing that I am changing my personal mission. And since I am mostly the one working for the Church of Korihor the most hours, that's not to say that we don't have other clergy. That's not to say that there aren't other people working on things, but we are. But we have a lot of people who are very, you know, like most Americans, we Korihors, we are stressed to the max right now. And they say that when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. I know there's got to be more people out there who feel it. I mean, I don't know how much of the reporting you're going to see on it, because the news doesn't like to report this bad news because, well, frankly, the corporations that run the news are largely responsible for it. Are largely responsible for what's happening in our country and around the world. So they try to tamp it down. They try to blame it on one person. Popular scapegoat right now is Donald Trump for good reason. He's an asshole, and he is, But frankly, if you think that Donald Trump is to blame for all of America's woes and problems right now, is because you don't get that Donald Trump is more of a symptom than a cause. Sure, he makes bad decisions. I think so. That's my opinion. I wouldn't have said that before the IRS and the White House decided earlier this year, 2025, to just announce to the whole world in a court case, so that the whole world would know that they just don't care if ecclesiastical leaders endorse political candidates or not, in spite of the fact that the law says not to do it. Now, I don't believe that church and state should mix. One of the values of the Church of Korihor is secularism. In other words, I don't tell people how to vote. I don't think people should be shamed for how they vote. You vote how you vote. And we as a country, no matter how us individually voted in the last election, or how we're going to vote in special elections, apparently quite a few coming up in the next year, and of course, everybody's favorite, we got our midterm elections coming up. I've told people before, I've said before, I will convert people who are MAGA to this movement. I will ordain people who are MAGA. It's fine with me, and I will not tell people how to vote. However, you deserve to know, from a moral standpoint, I don't, and you are going to, if you did and you like that movement, when I sermonize it personally, you're going to hear a lot of things you don't like. And that's because I won't shut up about the real world social implications that policy decisions and economic decisions are having in our country and in the world right now. So, but I will say this much, and to our friends out there who are red hats, take this for what it's worth. I really do think that we malign Donald Trump and put on him a lot of the problems that are actually us. We as a people are reflected in this man's policies. And while he doesn't represent the ideas I support or the ideas I believe in, he is my president, same as yours, and he is the president in the same way that Barack Obama was our president and Joe Biden was our president. And frankly, I miss both those guys, in spite of the fact that I have said very critical things about both of them. And I have said way more critical things about the Democratic Party. So I don't want anybody to confuse me as preaching on behalf of the Democrats. Democrats are as involved in this as anyone. Do they drive most of the decision making? Not right now. And it's bad. But right now we need to focus on the situation that we are in, take responsibility, I feel, as people for how we are contributing to it, and more importantly, can we do something about it? I think we have seen over the course of the last decade especially that there is we cannot rely on the government in this country to do even basic things that people in this country pay taxes expecting the government to do. Like even crude rudimentary things as we go on, they are just going to cut them down, they're going to cut them back and then point at each other and point at this duopoly that just happens to benefit billionaires and corporations. And while they sit there and point at each other and say, look what they did on behalf of the billionaires, as if there aren't billionaires on both sides of the political divide paying for exactly this to be going on. And you'll notice I left a part of the screen open here because I want to. That's because I want to show you something. This will be a little hard to see. Okay, but I came across this while I was doing research this week, trying to figure out how I'm going to address how my mission is changing and how the mission of the Church of Korihor is going to change with me. Since I'm taking the Church of Korihor with me where I go, and I needed to define, this first year, I've done a lot of reflecting over the last couple of months. Where did I go wrong? And it's not that the Church of Korihor hasn't been good, hasn't done good things. We have, and we've done great things. But I'm looking to the forward and said, I said at the beginning of this, my first Godless sermon, I will fail. I will start again. And I've said, if that means shutting down the Church of Korihor and starting up the second Church of Korihor and just doing everything completely different, I'm not afraid to do it. But I'm not giving up. And I'm looking into 2026 and saying, this is when we need the Church of Korihor more than ever before. Not everybody sees it, but I'm going to try again and do better about communicating to people. But in the course of this year, I have met the most remarkable people, and we have done the most remarkable things. Godless people who are atheists, who are agnostics, who are just spiritual, or who are non-religious, who want to see a change in the world. And I'm so proud to be involved with this and so proud to be a part of it. And I have realized, though, that is because of my shortcomings and my limitations, that that the movement hasn't grown faster. And so I am looking at this and saying, here's where we can do better and where I can personally do better. And one of those things, before I get into any of these exciting structural changes I'm excited about, I want to tell the thing I want to talk about first of all is what gets me excited. 2026 is the most exciting year of my life. It hasn't even started yet. And it's the most exciting year in my life because I think it is quite plausibly the darkest year for America in the history of this country. And that is when we need godless people, when we need atheists and agnostics, people of moral conscience to stand up and say, no gods, no kings. We are standing up to say that tyranny and slavery are standards we do not accept. Feudalism is a standard we do not accept. And if it means taking a dangerous stand against tyranny and against the barons and against the people who would try and tell us that they can control our policy, they can control our prices that we pay, they can control our wages, they can control our salary, and they can flex their muscles and put their thumb down on us. And and if we dare stand up, what? And you fill in that blank, fill it in with whatever you want. Okay, the most dangerous consequences, and I'm looking at this and saying some people are not going to be prepared as part of this movement to accept the most drastic of consequences for them individually, and that's good. Remember, one of my favorite hymns that I've written so far. I've written all of them. We'll get more people. I'm grateful that I'm able to enjoy writing these hymns. I love them. I don't know how many of you were here. Well, I do know how few of you were here for American Union, which I just played a minute ago, is one of my favorite hymns I've written so far. But anyways, you remember that I in my sermon Forgetting is not forgiving is not forgetting is not forgiving. Thank you. Uh, I debuted a song called "The Quiet Fight," and level one, I said then, and I've said it, and I've thought about it a lot. I've been in some pretty dangerous situations since I've been out on the road doing my street sermonizing, and since I've been traveling across this country, and thought a lot about level one. I am doing, and I would expect everybody else to do it too, and that is stay alive. Nonviolence is the way of the future. If this country descends into violence over our economic difficulties or our racial differences, it is a very short road to collapse for the entire system. It is not just that it's immoral to engage in political violence, it's that it is dumb. It doesn't get the job done. But that's not the same to say for being willing to take a risk that somebody may engage in political violence against you. And I have had threats. I have had people look me in the eye, and I could tell somebody's about to engage with me while I was out on the street preaching about against tyranny and against slavery, including wage slavery, which I insist again and again. They call it wage slavery because it's exactly what it is. It is wage slavery. It is slavery. And I'm willing to do it. Not everybody should be doing that. We should all be observing level one. I observe level one, which is stay alive. I'm trying to be careful. I am trying to be safe. I'm just also willing to take some risks. And I know some of other people are too. I ask everybody, please be nonviolent, and remember that we're going to win more hearts and minds with inspiring people and encouraging people. That being said, we have to be able to speak to the crisis that we are living in. This company, this image that you're looking at right here, is a report, an interesting report by a company called My Perfect Resume. Here's irony for you. This company uses AI to polish up your resume. And it's an interesting irony that they would be engaged in collecting this data and publishing this data, because basically their whole business, this little company, I don't even know anything else about them aside from this, it appears to be that we now live in a day and age where people will have to submit more job applications than ever before, and where they have to submit more resumes than ever before, and with less and less promise of actually getting a job. And their whole business depends on that. People are going to get fed up with trying to refigure their resume over and over again, only to have to turn around and get that resume largely ignored, and these days largely ignored by AI, as companies start to cut back on paying recruiters and cut back on paying human resources and paying for people to go through these applications. They're going to turn to AI to look at everybody's resumes. A lot of it, just save on costs, in spite of the fact of the same corporations, those listed in Wall Street, are posting record shareholder profits. It's like people, while we are being told and gaslit as Americans that you cannot, if you think you're spending more on groceries than ever before, it's obviously because you don't know how to read a receipt. Okay, really? I could have sworn I did. Or if you think you're paying more in rent than you ever did before, you just obviously don't know economics. Pretty sure I know numbers, right? And so while they're telling us that on the one side, they're making record profits. And this is my opinion, this is my perspective, and I defy anybody to point out to me how it is actually wrong. This is largely based on my values. I am an atheist. But I have values. Some people say you don't have a God, you don't have values. I assure you, I have values, and part of those values is simply put that record shareholder profits are stolen wages. It is stolen wages. If we as people do not insist on taking a piece of the pie, the people who the establishment of people who are paying for our politicians and buying our politicians, who are paying for our entertainment and threatening to take eh, who would have guessed how passionately we would all feel in 2025 about Jimmy Kimmel losing his job, about Stephen Colbert losing his job? You know, how who could have guessed all of that except those of us who looked at the future and said, these major studios and networks are merging. They were already too big as it was. And now they're merging. And, while it was reined in slowly, briefly during the Biden administration, it had picked up in the Trump administration, the first Trump administration. Now in this Trump administration, it's accelerated beyond what I have ever seen. We now have bigger mega corporations than ever before. Again, vote how you want. This is the outcome, is that they are literally the government is literally controlling the narrative of what people can joke about, what kind of entertainment we can have, what kind of news we are going to get, and we're supposed to expect that there are not going to be consequences in our daily lives. But the truth is, somebody has to speak truth to power. Somebody has to point out what the actual consequences are. This company, My Perfect Resume, for purely self-interested reasons, and I actually kind of respect them for it, put out this graphic. You see this gray area. I don't really have a pointer. You see over time, right? This is from 2010 to now. This broadening shaded area, right? The bottom line is the number of jobs that are being hired on, that are being brought on hired, according to reports from the government. Right? Well, that's interesting. Nancy, welcome. Thanks for being here. So the bottom line is jobs actually being hired for. The top line is job postings being posted by corporations. And traditionally, the two, as you can see, the 2 points move together. If there are more job postings, there are more hirings. But by the time we got to 2022, it had reached a peak of 38% of the jobs that were being posted. And they use economic data from surveys collected. The government collects these surveys and across the country. And what they were able to show was that as many as 38% of the job postings being posted online are what are called ghost jobs. They are jobs that the companies post and will never hire. So you have people out here applying for jobs and submitting more and more resumes than ever before, hence why My Perfect Resume is saying, hey, they're using AI to screen your resume without looking at it. Use AI to optimize it so that you can move up to the top of the stack, so that when you actually send out a resume, you're more likely to get something back. Perfect. That's Lisa points it out. That's exactly where we're at. You have people who are looking for jobs and being told that they don't have any, and yet look, they're posting more jobs than ever before. And if somebody wanted to confuse you and tell you you're not seeing what you're seeing, you're not experiencing what you're experiencing, they could just show you the one line and say, look, there's more. Look at the record number of jobs that are being posted, without mentioning, but they're not hiring for them. Now, it's true that number is coming down from 38% now to around 32, 33%. So roughly 1 in every 3 jobs being posted on, for people to get hired on in the United States. One out of every three are jobs they won't hire anybody for. They're just going to stay empty. They're going to stay vacant. Now, that could be for a variety of reasons. One, they're testing out the waters. Two, they're not finding qualified people. Some sectors of the economy, they're not finding anything. Oh, this is an interesting point, Auntie. Thank you for bringing it. Most jobs posted are filled internally, and then the job vacated to fill that job is eliminated. Sure, absolutely. There are a variety of reasons, but more importantly than anything else, I think we have to finally pay attention to what seems obvious, at least obvious to me, and it's been pointed out by many people in the past. Since the pandemic, they've expected people to come back into work in the office, and a lot of us have seen, either from our own employers, luckily this isn't my case, but in the case of my ex-wife, now ex-wife's employer, that they have been threatening people, saying, if you aren't willing to come in X amount of days out of the week, since we all made you go, stay home during the pandemic, even though their productivity is up. This was even during the big COVID. I'm just going to say the forbidden word there. We'll see what happens as a consequence if I get filtered out for any reason. During COVID, people they showed the reports that showed that productivity was up, that people working from home would do their work and just quit at the end of the day. And lo and behold, you had employers who were not satisfied with productivity. They didn't want it. They didn't want the extra productivity. I even saw a CEO went on the news and said, I don't pay you to be productive. And was told to defend their position on this when they started calling this quiet quitting. What is quiet quitting? It's working until the whistle blows and then stopping. And they call it quiet quitting. Oh, you mean not working uncompensated overtime? That's quiet quitting? Shame on us, right? And I even saw the CEO who went on TV and said, look, I don't pay you to be productive. I pay you to suffer so I don't have to. Make it make sense. I'll make it make sense for you. In the minds of some people who make decisions in this country and in our businesses and in our economy, in their minds, if somebody works for them and gets a paycheck to suffer, they are not responsible, they themselves, to suffer any anxiety because somebody else, because they can cast off the blame onto the people who work for them, in spite of the fact that most of the decisions are being made by them. So, in any event, then we had in 2022, they obviously discovered by 2022 that telling people, look, you're either going to come back into work or we're going to fire you. And all these people who couldn't afford to live in the city, as long before this pandemic happened, the cost of housing had gone through the roof. So people moved out to the suburbs, people moved out to the country, and discover, oh, these people who are working from home, it's not just they're working from home. They packed up and moved to where there was affordable housing, which is not within a 2-hour commute of where your office is. And so it became, all right, well, I guess I have to go find another job, because if you're going to fire people for not coming back into the office to work, well, I guess I'm fired, because I didn't just buy a house out in the country or rent an apartment or a townhome out in the country or out in the suburbs just so that I could, sell out of it and come back into the city and try and find, overpriced housing in the city again. You're gonna have to figure something else out. And then all of a sudden, a very interesting thing happened. Then You had these companies who were talking about taking a hard stand about, look, if you're not coming back into the office, the way Elon is making all the employees at X or Tesla or SpaceX do, if you're not going to come back in and suffer in person where I can see you, if you're just going to insist on quiet quitting, we're going to fire you. When that threat resulted in fire us, fire us, all of a sudden it was, well, okay, well, we're not going to fire you, but we're also going to stop hiring, or we're not going to provide the same opportunities. So in different sectors, there are different varied reasons, obviously. But at the end of the day, the reason why these why there are now these quote unquote ghost jobs, is because they can improve productivity and they can improve people's desperation by maximizing the desperation of working people to keep a job, by making sure that we all know you can look for a job. There can be job postings out there, but that doesn't mean that you're going to get one. And they're calling it the Great Reset, a Great Reset. They're trying to reset the economy so that we're experiencing enough financial pressure, enough desperation as costs go up and as people start losing their jobs, getting laid off. 2025, the year of the great layoffs. We had, millions of layoffs in this country. And yes, while hiring, they've still been hiring, the layoffs can't keep pace. The economy can't keep growing with the amount of layoffs that we're getting from federal workers, and then from the second largest hiring group in the country, largest hiring industry in the country, which is social services, which is companies, charities, and nonprofit organizations. I wish I'd had time to put together the statistics. I just read through it. I read this report talking about how an unprecedented number of people who work in shelters, people who work in museums and art installations, people who work in advocacy roles, and of course, people working in government-related public sector roles that are farmed out to private sector, farmed out to nonprofit organizations, are saying they're having such a hard time since being laid off from those jobs. They're having such a hard time finding another job in the same industry that even though many of them have master's degrees, graduate degrees, and educations in social work and in social sciences, they're finding jobs in a completely different sector. So in a time when we have unemployment going through the roof, when we have people looking for jobs for longer than ever before, and when the government is cutting back on services for people who are sheltered, claiming they're not doing it because you can't believe your own eyes. If something's happening in your neighborhood, no, it's not. If you see it with your eyeballs, no, it's not. If you can put it on a piece of paper, no, it doesn't. No, they haven't. If the government itself is reporting on it, filing the report and then burying it, or hoping and getting allies in the news organizations and in the networks to stop reporting it, you don't see it. If we're not showing it to you, you didn't see it. Okay. While that's happening, they have people who are paying more, and we have people who are paying more and more for basic essentials, trying to make ends meet. And they're saying, why don't you just take one of these jobs? We've got so many record number of jobs. Even though it's come down from 38% to 32%, you'll notice that bottom line is the number of jobs that are being posted as available for hiring, and it's been on a steady decline. So even though only 1 in 3 jobs are these ghost jobs, the number of jobs being posted is in decline. No wonder people are applying for 2, 3, 4 months or longer. In some cases, I know people who've been looking for a job for all of 2025. They're coming up on a year or longer looking for a job. They're qualified for a job. In most cases, they're applying for jobs that they are overqualified for. And we are now at a point where new graduates have fewer opportunities and are unable to get a job coming out of college. And the percentage is higher than it has ever been. Okay. Now, this is what I am passionate about right now, and the reason why I'm talking about this. Okay. It was one thing to go out onto the streets and start talking to people about how Christianity is flawed, or how atheism is at the heart of the secular movement that built this country and that built our lives and benefit, and all the benefits that we have in our lives, whether it's technology or policy, the ending of slavery. All of this came out of the secular movement. Even this country itself was founded in secularism. And it's one thing to go out and preach these things, and I believe in that, and I am glad that I did it. I also very quickly came to discover people in our country right now are so stressed that they can't even hear it. And the thing that they're stressed out about, that we as Americans are stressed out about, I am stressed out about. It's a real situation for me. And I believe that the values that we have as secular people are the most important values at this time. And in 2026, I feel the writing is on the wall. And I'm going to show you why the writing is on the wall, where we are going to have to we're going to have to make a change, because things are going to get a lot tougher. And the reason why I am optimistic, which is not a word I usually use for myself, because I am a pessimist at the end of the day. I am philosophically a pessimist. But as the biggest pessimist in history, Arthur Schopenhauer, said, pessimists are the most optimistic people you'll meet. We believe fundamentally that life, you cannot judge your future, you cannot judge your past based on a standard that you can't set in your mind, because you don't know what the future holds. And whatever has happened in the past, you can't change. And so you must accept that this is where you are, and you can only make the decisions that are meaningful to you right here and now. That's a difficult thing to do. And I'm going to show you in a minute how we're going to do it in the future. It is going to get a little bit dark right here in a minute. I do apologize for this. Remember that I said that TikTok, I spend a lot of time on TikTok, and I've been posting a lot of content on TikTok. Those of you who haven't been following me, look up Hellfire Agency on TikTok. Don't follow me on Facebook unless you are bold, brave people. Okay. Facebook is my guilty pleasure. It's where I post when I'm depressed. My guilty unpleasure. I've been posting on TikTok and watching a lot of TikToks. And my algorithm has been filled with people crashing out. A lot of creators are on TikTok are women. And so all the ones you're going to see here are women. I will defend myself only by saying, why am I seeing so many women they're mostly women on TikTok, creators on TikTok. And a lot of women in this country right now who are on TikTok are using it, the ones that are in the creator fund, are using it as a way to try and make ends meet, because they don't make enough money at their job. Which you can say, some people will say, is not a real job being an influencer. Okay, well, then why do they get paid for it? One. And number two, if they do get paid for it. And number two, if people who are working full time are making enough to live on their wages, why would they have to turn to being, social media influencers as well, just to make ends meet? So I'm going to show you this, and I hope it moves your heart, because it moved me to tears more than once. One of the things I've been doing is I hit repost. I don't make a comment. I don't put my face. I don't put my voice on it unless I absolutely feel like I have to bring attention to something. On TikTok lately, I see somebody who's in need and or who is quote unquote crashing out, willing to be vulnerable for the whole world about how bad their situation is, and I just repost it. I just use the fact that I have, a few thousand followers on TikTok to say, look, here it is. This is what's happening. Doesn't require a man to come in and put his face and voice to it. I'll give my audience so that these women could just talk and tell their truth. And I just want to show you a sample of those quote unquote crash outs.
Did you guys hear that the long-term unemployment rate is at 26%? So roughly 1 in 4 people who has been looking for work for over 6 months can't find it, can't get hired. If you were wondering, I am one of those people. I have 3 degrees. And I can't even get retail jobs. My unemployment runs out in 2 weeks, and I just I want to know, like, what the fuck do I do? What do I do? What do I do? What is everyone doing? I'm doing bad. I'm doing really, really bad.
I just need even just one person to tell me that I'm not alone. How are people affording it right now? How are people affording life? For reference, I'm commissioned, so I make anywhere between $65,000 to $75,000 a year, and I can't fucking do it. I had to cancel my health insurance because I can no longer afford that. I owe $4,000 for a surgery that my dog had back in April. I owe my dad $900 for a vet visit last week. I owe the IRS $2,700. And because I filed bankruptcy 2 years ago and it's still active, I found out today that my car lease is up in July. And because my bankruptcy is active, I won't be able to get another car lease. I won't be able to finance my car or a new car. And I have no other fucking option. I won't have a car anymore. How are people fucking doing it?
I just got fired from my job today. And there's just so much going on right now. The holidays, my kids' birthdays, my daughter wanted a sweet 16. I have been with this company for 3 years. And I work my ass off for them. I wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning for a shift at 3:30 in the morning. And I do all the bullshit that they tell me to do. And this is what happens. I'm a mom. I'm a female. I do shit that men do. Like, fuck, give me some leeway. Somebody sit here in my face and tell me that things will get better if I believe in God. Like, makes me so angry, I can't even tell you. He didn't keep me alive. I did.
Those of you who know my story know that that one speaks to me directly. I know I'm not the only one. So many of us in this world are living day to day just trying to make it. Not just financially or economically or health-wise, but in terms of the anxiety, perfectly natural anxiety. It doesn't have to be labeled as an illness, as a mental illness, for the anxiety to be real. To experience anxiety, the strange irony is, you can get medicated for it. You can get a prescription for it. But if you've ever done that, you'll know that a physician prescribing it to you will ask you, will generally ask you, and I as a matter of fact, I believe they're supposed to ask you. And every time I have gone in and gotten a prescription to get into treatment, they will ask you, do you have any kind of spiritual practice? And I laughed at the first doctor who told me that. I'm like, I'm an atheist and an ex-Mormon. And he said, okay, but do you have anything that you do? And for a spiritual practice. At that time, I didn't. And I said, well, no, I don't really do spiritual things. It's not really part of my life. And he said, the thing is, I can recommend you to therapy, and I can recommend you, and I can prescribe you medication. But statistically, it's usually not enough. And he said, from what we can see, you have to be able to find a reason to go on. And that is something that the medical industry just is not prepared to do for you. And if you lose that willpower, the will to go on, there's nothing we can prescribe you. There's no treatment we can give you that will make up for that. He said, so I would encourage you to find a spiritual practice. For me, I realized now, after doing a lot of meditating, after doing medicating, after doing some reflecting and soul searching, if you will, in my atheist, godless soul, that from the time I was 21 years old, I had been angry about the fact that people who only want to use you to get money out of you will say, you need to turn your life to God. And I'd never had a situation where somebody passionately pleaded with me or tried to convert me to, and tried to convince me to be grateful to God, except that person was also trying to get a check out of me. There was no way, even whether it's a delayed check or a check right now, they just wanted a check out of you. And because our society, our capitalist society, modern capitalist society, is a society that has switched, even the Christians have switched to, or maybe predominantly the Christians have switched their worship to mammon. It is not a worship of Christ. It is a worship of capitalism. And not just capitalism, because capitalism in and of itself has a lot of virtues. Capitalism does actually promote diversity. Capitalism does actually help to promote equality when it's done right, when it follows the principles that Adam Smith talked about in The Wealth of Nations. One of these many books people like to hold up and scream about, you don't know anything about economics, in spite of the fact that they've never cracked that book open. In case of Wealth of Nations, it's a series of books. But the principles are laid out there that say very plainly, never do corporations or never does wealth and money incorporate into the hands of a few, except they meet together and start to conspire against the public. Whether it's kings and barons, whether it's billionaires and corporations, never does the wealth and power concentrate into the hands of a few, but they will figure out a way to concentrate that power and ensure that other people don't get to participate in it. And that, it turns out, that basic capitalism principle is the one that people who who claim to believe in capitalism don't really believe in. The idea of capitalism was supposed to be that competition would bring prices down and make prices affordable, because they would, and because quality would improve, innovation would improve, and the prices would come down as they compete with each other. But when they stop competing, they form bigger mega corporations. They start buying politicians. They start forming nonprofit organizations that are tax-free, like the Church of Korihor, or like any church out there in America right now. And, create a tax-free organization, basically a church, for putting politicians and billionaires and their representatives in the same room at some swanky golf retreat, at some, on some cruise or on some island somewhere. We won't in the Virgin Islands. Don't want to talk too much about that. We talk about such islands an awful lot, don't we? Lately, that they put those, and just like a church, they're tax exempt organizations. And what are they? They're bribery clearinghouses. They are an opportunity for politicians to get together with corporations and make it clear that when you can't get reelected, you have a job or you have a board seat somewhere, but we're watching what you're doing now while you're in office. And it's totally legal. Not only is it legal, frankly, our tax dollars are paying for it because you have all this money moving through these corporations and it's all tax-free. And so we are paying for the privilege for these people to buy policies for our future. And while that's happening, you have people with legitimate anxieties, people who are suffering on a regular basis and being told, and with existential dread, told you need to turn to God, you need to be grateful to God. For what? The God that they're talking about is not Christ. The God they're talking about is capitalism, is the worship of mammon. And Christianity, what's disheartening to me about it is that Christians, once upon a time, were at the center of the labor movement. It was Christians largely, together with secularists, who were fighting to put an end to slavery. It was Christians once, like Woody Guthrie, who were at the center of opposing fascism. Now it's become, to say that you are anti-fascist has become controversial. There are people posting online, social media accounts, ordinary people posting that they think that you should be deported if you claim to be anti-fascist, even if you're American. And now they're clearing the way, where court decisions are being made and orders are being made to say that they can deport American citizens, even now a Supreme Court case to overturn the 14th Amendment and overturn so-called birthright citizenship so that they can deport American citizens. Now, again, I'm not here to tell you how to vote. All I'm saying is this. When our constitutional rights start to erode, they erode not in individual points, but in sheets. They start to cascade fail down the line. And all the time we are told to be grateful to God that we are alive, because that's the only thing that we're supposedly allowed to have in a world where we're supposed to motivate ourselves, get up every day, do the work, go collect whatever pay they don to put on to give us, and then say, look, you're alive and you should be grateful to God for that. Meaning we should be grateful to the billionaires who are buying our policy. Let me get this back here. But like I say, 25 years ago, I had to stop. 25 years ago, a missionary in Peru. My daily struggle was lying awake in bed, trying to convince myself not to go into the bathroom because I knew I wasn't going to come back out of it. And the only person who showed up for me in that moment was me. Now, largely because I couldn't ask for help because I've always been bad at asking for help. And certainly because I grew up in a system where you didn't ask anybody for mental health help. And that wouldn't matter if I did, there were no resources available for me back then. Today, I understand that the Mormon Church is providing more mental health resources for their missionaries. I hope that's true because I'm talking to more and more people who have left the Mormon Church, even young people today who have experienced exactly the same existential crisis that I was experiencing. And God didn't pull any of them through. We pulled ourselves through. So maybe I get a little angry about, I get a little passionate about people like this woman saying, God wasn't there for me. God didn't pull me through. I pulled me through. And so that's why I will occasionally rant. In any event, thanks for letting me rant. Let's keep going. We're almost there.
I'm going to be homeless or dead in a couple of weeks. Either is a much better option than paying more to be prisoner in my apartment complex for another year, especially when the prices on the website have been hundreds of dollars cheaper for well over a year. But I can only move if I manage to find a corporate job or I have a co-signer, and the only family that could help are all baby boomers who haven't had to rent themselves for 40 to 50 years and simply refuse for no good reason. I was laid off after I moved to the other side of the country, and I've been stuck here ever since. I finally found enough freelance gigs to cover my rent, but now they're increasing my rent, and I cannot keep barely living like this. I have never paid so much money to feel so unsafe.
There's a house built out of stone. There is a house built out of stone.
Those of you who aren't watching the screen, this song is playing while this young mother is putting a picture of her child in a car seat in her car where she is living now. We're going to get into this in a moment, and it's going to become a little bit clearer what I mean when I say that my mission, my personal mission, is going to change. And I am very grateful for the people in my life who have helped me to see where it is that I have failed in 2025 and the need in 2026 that is going to be growing, and how I can do something that can change things. And this is at the heart of it. I'm going to be telling you about it here a little bit more. I'm living in my car. At the moment, I'm in my old office. No, it doesn't look like my old office. I've taken all the art down off the walls, and I'm sending it to my partner in Virginia. I got divorced, and my ex-wife wanted me out of the house, and I agreed. I totally agreed. I could be living with my parents down in St. George, and if the state of Utah asks you, I have moved there. I've been splitting my time between Virginia and St. George, and living out of my car on the road in between, but spending as much time as I can while I'm traveling through the country from one coast to the other, going out and doing the work of the Church of Korihor. And I have seen again and again that the problems we're having here in Utah are so drastic across this whole country. Beautiful country that we live in, incredible people that belong to this country. Are Americans, for all of our shortcomings, we are good people. It's easy to make fun of us for being whatever, fill in the blank. But the fact of the matter is, you go out and meet the people in this country, and you're going to see people fighting and struggling to make ends meet, while also trying to just stay motivated and to fall in love with being alive as best they can. And knowing that for every one of them you see, you don't see how many others who are at home, who have closed off, who have shut off their phone, who have closed off to the world if they can, who are doom scrolling on their devices or watching TV and just vegging out or getting high or whatever they're doing just to keep alive. And these are our people. This is our people. This is our situation. In the midst of this, we have people moving into their cars who are not in my situation. When people reach out to me and say, Joe, I was so devastated to hear you saying that you're living in your car. And I tell them, don't be. I have seen sleeping rough, and it's not what I'm going through. I have places to go. I have family that loves me and cares for me and has made sacrifices for me. And I am grateful for that. My privilege is sometimes astounding to me. And I look at something like this. A woman and her little boy living in a car because they have nowhere else to go. It's unacceptable. It is unacceptable. And it's time for us to become aware and to make other people aware. This is not just a problem. It's always been a problem, but it is accelerating for very specific reasons that are going to come more clear as we finish up this video. So I'm just going to continue. I hope that the idea of this, that you have, well, people will try to tell you that being a social media influencer is not a job. You have people like this woman who's asking for people to like and comment on her video so that she can make enough money to get her son out of the cold. Maybe it's not true, but I can tell you, I believe it's true. I know plenty enough people who are in this situation. And it just breaks my heart. And I look and I say, if the government's not stepping in to help, if that social safety net doesn't exist, and the churches aren't doing it, do I need to remind anybody out there that of the woman who called around to the churches in her area to say, I have a baby who needs formula, and they were told no. She was told no. We don't have any help for you. That one of those organizations was the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, that has hundreds of billions of dollars in assets, including no one knows how many billions of dollars in liquidity, and supposedly has a charity program, supposedly has the ability. But anybody who knows this church knows what you have to go through in order to qualify in their minds as one of the people who deserves to get help. Who's going to do whatever happened to the least, when you, as you have done to the least of these, that flavor of Christianity, I put to you, is gone, replaced by the worship of mammon. And maybe there are a handful of Christians out there. I know for a fact that there are a handful of Christians out there fighting to bring it back to what it used to be, to what it should be. By all appearances, Pope Leo is one of them. I hope he is. I hope he figures it out. I hope he can appeal to them, to his own congregation and to the people at large, to say, we are, what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the entire world and lose his soul? What happened to Christianity's soul? If it really is a majority Christian country that we live in, and Christians are out there caring for people who are in hard times, how is this woman having to ask people on TikTok to give her likes, comments, and follows so that she can take care of her little boy?
I lost my job because of federal budget cuts, and I'm having a hard time getting hired anywhere because I would like to be a lawyer and go to law school, which doesn't start for another year, and people are not super thrilled to hire me right now.
I'm just going to pause right there. I once upon a time tried to get into law school. And when I decided that my first career of filmmaking was basically over. And let me tell you, what ultimately talked me out of it, because I thought about it for a while. Recently, actually, this was as recently as last year. And looked into it, talked to a few people who were attorneys. And every person who is a practicing attorney encouraged me to very carefully consider not becoming an attorney, because for so many people who go into the practice of law, there is no way forward to a job that will actually pay down the student loans that are required to get to graduate from law school, especially from a law school that people are going to consider respectable. So ultimately I wound up not pursuing it, not restarting my whole career with hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt. Even if I'd gotten it for cheap, I was going to wind up needing hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt if I was going to put myself through law school. And I had so many friends, close personal friends, some of whom you may know their names if you're in the ex-Mormon community. I'm just going to say, I'm not going to put it, who told me it's not worth it, and that they people who regret becoming attorneys. I really hope this person, I hope that she has a plan. I hope she has contacts, because it's a very difficult career to be in. That being said, one of the few things that we still make in America are lawsuits.
Because I'll be done shortly thereafter. And in order to make ends meet, I have been posting some reels on Facebook where my dad can see. He follows me on Facebook. To promote my photography so that I can have a little bit of extra money and pay my bills. My dad's feedback for me today was that I need to smile more because he doesn't like buying things from people who aren't happy.
Sorry, I'm shaking. Last night I shared with you that there's a transitional housing program near me called My Sister Susan's House. This program takes in and houses up to 18 months children and young adults who are unhoused and pregnant or parenting. And they have had all of their federal funding pulled. So why would the most pro-life administration ever pull funding from a program such as this? Well, I just got the grant application. Let's take a look at what's new this year, straight out of Project 2025. I'm hot. Buckle up, okay? Now, before I get into this, I need to remind you that many of these girls coming there are children and people escaping violence and sexual abuse. Just keep that in the context as I read this. In order to continue receiving federal funding, it says you must provide education on the benefits of marriage and family stability for long-term economic success, the importance of responsible parenthood within the context of marriage, the developmental benefits for children raised in stable two-parent households, practical relationship skills that support healthy marriage and family formation, and the correlation between family structure and positive youth outcomes. They also must prove that they teach personal responsibility for one's choices and actions, the value of delayed gratification, the connection between personal choices and life outcomes.
I have been homeless for roughly 1,080 hours. I have lost it. Funding has been cut from domestic violence shelters. There is nothing in the world that could ever justify you taking money away from victims of abuse, women and children, infants, right? Like, we're just letting them be out on the street. You know, when SNAP benefits were cut, the community rallied together. People donated money for food and people were able to get free meals. That needs to happen for shelters. Shelters are keeping people alive just like food does.
I hope that people heard that, because now we're getting down to it. She's exactly right. She's exactly right. Now we're going to talk. This last one is going to be about healthcare. And she's not going to say anything that you don't already know. But I hope that we can just reach out, everybody open up your heart and hear what this young woman is saying. And feel it. We all know it, but let's just take a moment, be patient. I know that we have a lot going. Everybody has a lot of stress and anxiety already. Feel it.
Hi guys, I'm Mel, and I pay $425 for a 3-month supply of eye drops made out of my own blood that I would go blind without. It is a necessary medication, and insurance does not cover this for anybody, not just my insurance, not just my case. There is not a single case in the entire United States where this is covered. And it makes me cry every fucking time. Because the first people that I think about when I check out with my serum tears is I think about how many people can't fucking afford this. Used to be this put together rare disease advocacy page And it's because I used to have hope. And I would get on here and talk about treatments and talk about my next steps, and I still do. But lately it's been a lot of crying and mental breakdowns. No matter what I do, no matter which way I do it, nothing fucking changes. And I'm just so mad at the injustice of it all. I am mostly housebound, and I feel like such a huge financial burden to my family, even though they assure me that I am not. There are so many thousands of us who need these eye drops. Can you think about how many people are struggling to pay for them? Can y'all think about how many people should not be working, should have disability, but no, they don't give us, we don't get disability for this disease. I've already been denied once. Waiting on my second denial. This treatment literally keeps people like me who cannot produce any basal tears from going blind. How does the United States and how do insurance companies not recognize that as a necessary treatment? And I have friends that I've lost because they ended their lives due to this disease, and I myself have come so close to it many times.
I try not to complain, but I have a person in my life to whom I can complain. And sometimes getting through a day, the only way I can manage it is because I have this person I can complain to who will bear my complaints and just listen. And one of my complaints in the Church of Korihor, related to the Church of Korihor, I don't always share with you guys, has been how difficult it has been for me to figure out how we're supposed to get attention in a competitive marketplace where most churches, Christian churches, are started by millionaires as tax havens. And that means that they can purchase coverage, they can purchase advertising, they can get people, they can employ people full time, etc., because they've got millions of dollars, that they can turn into liquidity enough to be able to hire and so forth. And they even have church planters, people whose job it is full time, just to help churches take a little bit of money and make it into a lot of money and do it all tax free, and realizing that was never going to be open to me. That was never going to be a part of setting up a secular church. And realizing, shit, I started in yet another thing, engaged in yet another thing, where I stupidly believed that because the idea was good, it would take off, people would pay attention, and people would become interested in it. But everybody I know who is interested in what we're doing is passionate about what the Church of Korihor is about. Make it make sense. And Winter told me, do you realize how many very good nonprofit organizations are out there right now struggling? And especially now, you guys heard just a minute ago how basically Heritage Foundation's Project 2025 is in full implementation now. And that's why domestic violence shelters are getting shut down, because their only funding was federal funding. And the federal government is making good on the threat, the quietly buried threat put into a document, exposed to the world, so that the people who are in charge of making it happen can sit here and tell us it's got nothing to do with us. It's got nothing to do with our campaign. It's got nothing to do with our party. It's got nothing to do with this administration. And yet here it is. You see the results. Again, don't believe your eyes or ears, but here are the results. It's happening before your eyes. That if you want money from the taxpayer to go to domestic violence instead of going to making more warplanes to sell to fucking Mohammed bin Salman, if you want that money to go to domestic violence shelters, your domestic violence shelter has to show how you are convincing women and children from domestic violence situations that they would be better off going home to their abuser. And that's policy now. If you can't do it, and how could they? You lose your funding, and now they have to, or be homeless, or go hungry. This is the world we live in. When Winter had said to me months ago, this was early this spring, and said, do you realize how many of these organizations are already struggling to make ends meet, are probably going to have to shut down in many cases, experiencing exactly what you're going through? And said, well, you're trying to create something new, something that already exists is already failing. When what you could be doing is partnering with the people who already have something going and saying, let's not compete in the same marketplace. Let's just work together. Let's make this thing happen. This is why one of the most important lessons of my life has been learning how to listen, and how I have never been very good at listening, and learning from people who are smarter than me. They're right. I have been trying to create something new at the Church of Korihor. And we are creating something new here. But creating whole new plans without to solve real world problems that there are people who are already experts in, already have organizations developing these things, developing the shelters and making place for people to go, who are out there trying to feed the hungry, people in a lot of cases who are already connected to Christian churches that are already shutting them out and telling in 2025 and telling them, you can't use our kitchen, you can't use our property, or else you're going to have to pay us more money. You're going to have to pay us to use our kitchen so that you can go out and use. That was the one that really pissed me off recently, was finding out that there are soup kitchens that the churches were telling them, if you're going to come in and use our church kitchen still to go out and feed people who are hungry, you're going to have to pay us. You're going to have to pay us, and you're going to have to pay us more than you have in the past. And it's like, what happened here to the mission? What happened to this Christian heart that's supposed to be showing us all why it is we don't need the government to be caring for people, because that's the church's role. If that's the church's role to care for people instead of the government's role to care for people, then why aren't they fucking doing it? And it came home to me very personally recently, and I won't tell you a lot, because there are good people involved in this. Who are not trying to hurt my family, who have gone out of their way to help my family. By the time when my ex-wife and I filed our divorce decree and settled how we're going to split up money, finances, custody, and gone through this very painful process for a very amicable divorce. It was less than 1 month before my ex-wife and my children were facing homelessness. I am living in my car so that they won't have to experience that. I could have gone out and rented another place to live. I could look to my ex-wife and say, "Wow, you wanted to have the kids, and shoulder most of the financial burden yourself with child support from me." I could look at that and say, "But but I'm going to need all this money for me, and because she makes more money than I do, I could probably get away with it." But I didn't do that because it's not about hurting the person I've been in love with for 20 years. It's not about hurting the mother of my children, and it's certainly not about hurting my children. And so I came back here now, trying my best to keep my family housed. And it required me to be here personally, at least for a time, in spite of the fact that I just got this divorce with this person who doesn't want me living in her home and doesn't want my presence around. And I get it. But now people who care for us, and I do think they care for us, in that moment, when I said, "Did you reach out to? Did you reach out to? Did you reach out to?" I can come in and make up some of the difference. But what about these people who will help? And she did, and was told, "If you want help, you have to go to the church, the Mormon church." And when my ex-wife told them they won't help me, they said, "No, they help everybody." Do they? Apparently, people who don't know that this woman's ex-husband goes up to Salt Lake City under the spires of the newly being renovated Salt Lake City Temple to distribute blankets and water and food to people living on the streets. Yet another winter where people are dying on the streets in Utah. Oh, but they help anybody. Bullshit. The least of these, my brethren, are there. They're right there. I can show the footage of me going out there and serving with these people. I don't want to, because right now I'm being rather critical, and I don't want to associate that energy with our work. People turn their back on them, turn their back on my family, because we aren't Mormons anymore. And they say that the church should be filling this role. The values of the church, not just the Mormon church, of the Christian church writ large, are the reason why domestic violence shelters are shutting down. Because they had promised their own followers that they were going to make sure that women and children who are trying to escape an abusive situation understand the value of delayed gratification. You're hungry now. It's a good thing to be hungry. If we fed you, you just get used to being fed. And What version of Christ would want hungry people to be fed? No, obviously not. And that they need to teach and preach to victims of domestic violence the value of going back to your husband while they go and sell us and get the media to sell us on that we are living in a male loneliness epidemic, so that nobody has to say, maybe some men would benefit from learning how to grow as a person and recognize that the reason why people don't want you around in their life is because you screwed up. And maybe you need to change. I never in my life have raised my hand to a woman or a child. That doesn't mean that they didn't get sick of me anyway. I could say that somewhat joking because my children love me. And my ex is appreciative of me. But she needed her own space. And she was a woman. I don't want to reveal too much about her situation. I've talked about this before. I don't think, she doesn't mind. I hope. I think. Let me reevaluate. From my perspective, I married a person 20 years ago who had never lived on her own. At that point, I had at least lived some years on my own. And I knew what it was like to have freedom, where you have your own space and where you make your own choices and where you are accountable for paying your bills and where you're accountable for keeping yourself fed. Or if you don't, you're going to have to learn how to go without and make sacrifices. And also to try and find that self-reliance that says, yes, I'm hungry, or yes, I'm in a bad situation, or yes, I'm stressed out, but at least I have my own space. At least I am in my own place. And if I just manage my anxiety right now, I will figure it out. I've been through harder things than this. And there is a benefit to that, of being able to have the experience of being on your own and being able to say, I've been through harder things than this. I did not go through this. I didn't get, my car repossessed. I didn't get evicted. I didn't get fired. I didn't get this. I didn't get, people who loved me turn their back on me. I didn't get betrayed. I didn't go through all of that to have this problem show up in my life and think it's going to break me. Are you kidding me? You're not going to break me with this. I've been through harder shit than this before. And that's a real benefit you can get from living by yourself. In a real way, by loving a person for 20 years and making sacrifices for her as she made sacrifices for me. I inadvertently took that away from her. She's never had that experience. And I spend quite a bit of time on social media, not just on TikTok, on Instagram and Facebook and so forth, with, hearing it again and again with women who say, they don't tell you in the trad wife trap. They don't tell you in the gospel of, your life is about becoming a wife and a mother. Your life is about becoming somebody's helpmeet, and how wonderful it is, how nice it will be when one day you get to be pregnant, one day you get to have a baby, when one day you get to create a home and an environment to raise children, and you'll have a man who's going to take care of you and be your whole world. And they no part of any of this does somebody say, of course, you're going to be stuck in that situation if you ever find that it's not as idyllic as we're telling you. You're going to have to stay with it, because the years where you would have had the opportunity to get an education, to get a career, to get years of experience, you have spent in the shadow of a man. And it makes me guilty oftentimes that this person who lived in the shadow of a man all of her childhood, as most of us did, well, many of us did, and frankly, we're privileged if we could in our society, then went from his home and his shadow to mine and spent 20 years in my shadow, even though I think I was a pretty good husband. I think I was a pretty good father. Not perfect. I think I am a very good father, in fact. I've been a good friend to her, and we were lovers, and we were best friends. And when the whole world turned their back on us, we had each other's backs for 20 years. But never being able to have that freedom and know that experience like I had when I was young, of being able to stand on your own, of being able to be your own advocate because necessity drove you to it. I took that from her by falling in love with her. Doesn't really matter. I didn't mean to hurt anybody. And is it my fault or is it the patriarchy's fault? Don't answer. What difference does it make? Here we are in the situation. So when she said, I don't want to live with you anymore, I got it. I understood. I understood because we had talked about it, because she confronted me all the ways in which it's not healthy for her. I said then, well, I said very little then, but I've said since, all right, let's talk about what it would look like. And all in all, it's been a very healthy thing for both of us. And it's been healthy for my kids. And because we are doing this in an amicable, healthy way, my kids still have a relationship with their father and still love and appreciate me, and I'm grateful for that. And still love and appreciate their mom, and don't witness us tearing each other down or talking about each other behind each other's backs. And again, when people message me or talk to me and express their sympathy for the fact that I'm going through this divorce, which has been hard, at the same time, I tell them, I will say again and again, I am so grateful to not be experiencing what I know so many people who've experienced divorce to be experiencing. I don't worry that my ex-wife is telling my children all the ways in which I was a bad husband, though surely if she were to start that conversation, she would have something to say. I'm sure there's something. I know for a fact there are things, because I am not perfect, and I was not a perfect husband, and especially considering that I got married at 25 and did not know what that was, as many people do. But even the most healthy march forward, most healthy marriage, the most healthy relationship is going in a patriarchal society is going to involve women feeling that they're overshadowed and like their independence is frayed or gone, or or having to live under somebody else's name, somebody else's family, somebody else's identity. And then to find women who are in that situation, for me to consider that while it's that difficult what I'm experiencing and what my ex is experiencing in this amicable divorce, to consider how many women out there are also in fear for their lives. And now we have a system that says to them, that says to the only shelters, the only places where they can go, you should be homeless for leaving your husband because you don't realize that life is imperfect and everybody needs a man in their life. And to preach to them, to cause these organizations that are the only organizations who are taking care of them right now, to say to tell them, you have to preach to them the virtue of going back to your abuser. It pisses me off. It really pisses me off. And just like we saw with these women on TikTok, they're 100% right. We are seeing a society that is showing to the world, to the whole world, we are doubling down as Americans on turning our back on women if they want to have their own identity, have their own future, if they want to have a healthy, happy way forward in a relationship with their loved ones. They are going to be punished. And that it has to be made clear to them that they are going to be punished because that's what Jesus would do. Because that's what God expects of us. To say, and I look at that and think, is this the Christianity of 100 years ago? I'm sure for some people it was. But again, there was Woody Guthrie. There were Christians. There was Fred Rogers. There have been Christians from the beginning of social movements who have been leaders in making resources available. Even the Mormon Church at one point had created a model that the US government mimicked and used as a pattern and a model to learn how to take care of people when they are impoverished. And since then, Christianity has changed. And it was already not great. But they doubled down. And in the midst of this, we have these social programs. And this is where I am. This is why I decided to sermonize at you today. In 2026, I'm going to be back out there doing like I started, sermonizing. And from time to time, I may spread the good news of atheism. But what I now see is that the need that we have in our society is a need to advocate for organizations that the government and churches are turning their backs on them, and they need somebody to stand up and say, I am not paid by this organization. I am not compensated by this organization. My organization is its own. If you want to donate to it, I am very grateful. I will take your help, and I need it. But my work is no longer just to support the Church of Korihor. My job and the Church of Korihor's job is to support these organizations and to support the people that they serve and to give them people that they can turn to when churches and governments turn their backs on them. When the state turns its back on these organizations and these people who, so many of these people who work in providing services like testing water to make sure it's potable and drinkable, and now have no job and have to go and what? Bus tables, go out and work in a call center because the funding has been cut to their job. The people who have the expertise we need at the Church of Korihor, if we were going to start an organization that was going to feed people, that was going to protect victims of domestic violence. There are people who are experts at it. We don't have the money to pay them. Or if I did, I would be out there building that right now, building from scratch something somebody's already built from scratch. These people who have years, decades of experience doing this, why duplicate efforts? We need to be supporting them now. But because we're in a situation where we have these people whose job it is, whose passion it is to care for marginalized people, including women and children, including pregnant women, including victims of domestic violence, including people with mental health crisis, including people who are differently abled, including senior citizens, including people who are BIPOC, including people who are LGBTQIA+. Why build something new? Something that exists is already suffering. It's already suffering. I have a new thing that I'm building, and I'm proud of it. Apart from my children, the best thing I've brought into this world is the Church of Korihor. And I've made mistakes. But in the midst of those mistakes, I've had some great successes. And I'm going to take that into the new year. So this is what I'm planning to do. In 2026, I'm going to commit my funds, whatever I can afford, my time, my effort, my energy, into making other people in the world aware that we godless people care about the organizations that are being overlooked and overshadowed and forgotten about, and that you can help these organizations. And among those organizations are going to be labor unions. I am passionate about unions. Even though I have worked as a business owner or as an independent contractor almost my entire career, I have seen how the neglect of labor unions and of the rights of people to collectively bargain has crashed our economy and has made anxiety among the working class perhaps the most devastating catastrophe in the history of this country since the 13th Amendment, which did not eliminate slavery, but went far, but did usher in the age of wage slavery, an age that people think we should return to make America great again, which isn't a political party, and it isn't a candidate. It's not a person. It's an idea. It's an idea that we were all better off when marginalized communities just accepted being marginalized. and they didn't have the ability to organize and fight for one another. But a godless world is a world where people who are marginalized have only each other. And if we don't have each other's backs, then we truly have no purpose. If we're not here for each other, if we're not here to advocate for people who are working, if we're not here for each other, we truly have nothing. And so that is why I'm passionate about the general strike. While I was in Tulsa, Oklahoma, preaching a godless sermon, a man came up to me, a young man came up to me on the street corner and handed me a printout folded up in his pocket while I was on camera and said, sorry, just making sure nobody's calling to me. I might have to go in to make sure everybody's okay. And said to me, you need to know about the general strike. And as those of you who were watching me live saw as I reacted and said, look at this, I'm experiencing labor activism in Tulsa, Oklahoma, which, by the way, it turns out one of the coolest places I've ever been to. That night, as I was driving away from Oklahoma, trying to make it to Virginia, I had stopped at a gas station and going in to pay for gas, I had posted a video saying, does anybody remember when during the campaign, Donald Trump stood up and said that we have the ugliest airports and that we have in this country, and that this country, our cities in this country are so embarrassing that we're an embarrassment to the world. Forgive me, it wasn't Tulsa, it was Louisville. Louisville. No, yeah, Louisville. And I said, how dare you? If you ever get a chance, I hope that you get a chance to get into a car at some point in your life and drive across this country. We truly have a beautiful country. And the more people I meet in it, the more I realize that however they try to get us to stereotype each other, red states and blue states, and Republicans and Democrats, and people, or those people, whether you're talking about people who are black, whether you are talking about people who are gay, whether you are talking about people who are trans, whether you are talking about people who are white. And the more they can get us to otherize each other and say those people, these people over in this place or that place, because somehow we can judge all the people in an area on the basis of the policies being made by the handful of purchased politicians in that area. Overlooks that in every one of those places are people who do not fit that stereotype. People who are not only sort of like you, they're exactly like you. Talk a little differently, dress a little differently, look a little different, come from different ethnic groups, are experiencing different kinds of mental health struggles, different anxieties, have different preferences, different tastes, and yet are trying to be happy and fruitful and productive in a country where fewer and fewer people in power are interested in whether or not they have a roof over their head. Fewer and fewer people are interested in whether or not their children will get an education. Fewer and fewer people in power are interested in whether or not education even exists in this country. And these people are beautiful people who care about other human beings. That's when I realized that coming out there and preaching to people about atheism was missing a great opportunity. And then one of them attracted me. One of them approached me and said, "Have you heard about the general strike?" I put it into the URL into the description notes of this video for the benefit of those who are live here. I'm going to post it in the chat. The general strike started out as a project by people in New York, as my understanding, who had read about that political scientists have evaluated that when 3.5% of the workforce threatened to go on strike, whatever locale that is, where 3.5% of the workforce strike, policy changes actually happen because the people in power in that area realize that that it's not just gripes, that it's serious, and they're going to start losing money, and they're going to start losing power, and they're going to start getting blamed. I remember, it was, is it Thomas Piketty wrote a book that was a pretty controversial book just a few years ago. I wish I could remember the title right off the top of my head. About capital, about the history of capital. On Capital, I think it was called. What was it called? Yeah, anyways. And I'd never heard this before. And it said that it was when, bless you, Korahor, bless you, that when the working poor in France got down to 14%, I think it was, 14% of the wealth in France. They stormed the Bastille. It was when they got down to like 14% of the wealth was in the hands of the working class. They started taking the wealthy, the aristocrats, which is just the wealthy. It's just people with fancy titles connected to their wealth. They started taking wealthy people and dragging them out into the streets and feeding them to the guillotines. That's how the French Revolution started. And already in America, the percentage of wealth held by the working poor is a fraction of that. And this was like 10 years ago. If you noticed in the last 10 years that quite a few people, how many people would you say who believe that this country is on the verge of a civil war? How many people do you know who blame billionaires for the crises that we're living in? And is it any surprise? You can say that that's a moral crisis. Many people do. And say, why do these people, they have misdirected anger? Is it misdirected? Is it? Or are we just becoming more aware of exactly the problem? If 3.5% of the population decides to strike, they suddenly become aware. There are people in power who suddenly become aware that there's enough people to shut down consumerism in that area, to shut down the circulation of money in that area and hold it captive. In America, coast to coast, they decided, this group of people, that would be about 11 million workers. And so that they couldn't shut down an organization, what they decided was to create a decentralized movement. A decentralized movement where people from different organizations or no organizations take up the cause to collect strike cards, which is to say, to get people from across this country to sign up and commit that if we get to 11 million people who will strike and stop working, not because everybody needs to. We need most people to continue working. The economy needs it. The corporations need it, and it's not like these corporations aren't part of our system. We need the corporations to still exist for now. But it's enough. We need enough people who can say, that could be me. I could take the risk. I could decide that if we can get 11 million people to agree with it, I'll be one of the 11 million who says, I'm not working until our demands are met. And then their demands are placed there. I'm not going to preach on behalf of their demands because, frankly, some of them are political, and I don't believe in doing that. But this is what I want people to know. This is one thing that you can do. Not an organization. Like I said, it's decentralized. We are one organization of many that's going to be doing this, that is doing this. And I personally am passionate about making people aware you can strike. You can commit and make it public and make it clear that even if your workplace is not organized and unionized, everybody who works in this country can choose to be a part of making a statement if they are in a position to be able to do that when the time comes. To say if 11 million of our brothers and sisters in this country, 11 million of our fellow workers are willing to say, we'll stop working until our demands are met on behalf of everybody. If you're in a position to do that, and only if you're in a position to do that, because there's a risk involved. There is no guarantee that there's going to be somebody who steps in to make sure that you or your family get fed. It's a risk. Somebody's going to have to. We are going to have to accept that there's a risk involved here, because frankly, the people that we're striking against to make sure that workers get better rights, they don't care whether they individually don't care or collectively they don't care. They don't care. It doesn't really matter. They don't care if there are people out here who are going hungry. They don't care if there are people out here who are cold. They don't care if there are women and children who are terrified to go home. They don't care. And they have made policy that involves forcing nonprofit organizations that are designed to help those people to make sure that they are educating the people they're serving to inform them that they don't care, that no one cares. Don't turn to a church. They don't care. In this situation, in this crowded church atmosphere, where people are leaving church more than ever before, is it any wonder that perhaps soon the only church that will be out there fighting for workers is the Godless Church of Korihor? Level 1 is stay alive. Level 3 is speak out when the time is right. For most people within the sound of my voice within the next year, you are going to be strictly level 1. I get it. I believe in it. I support it. I ask you, please stay at level 1. Stay alive. There has to be people who survive oppression to build the world after it has collapsed. But there also have to be a select few people who are in a position and a willingness to speak out when time is right. And I am one of them. I'm proud to be one of them. there's a real possibility that I am in danger. I guarantee you I'm in danger. I don't share with people all of the ways. I don't want anybody to get scared. All the ways in which just in the few weeks since I started doing this, I have found myself in danger. I've been tailed by law enforcement for what I'm doing. I have been warned, and I have received threats. I'm willing to accept that risk, but it's only for a few to accept, because far and away, the most important people in the movement towards a better future are going to be people who survive. Just get through it. And if you're in a position, though, to make a change, then I could use your help. So here's what I'm going to be doing. I've been talking a little bit lately about how we're revamping on the Church of Korihor's website for people to join as friends of Korihor for free. Now, that we're still going to have some things that are only accessible and available on the website, like the podcast and like luminary training, ordinations, membership, actual membership in the fellowship of the Church of Korihor, etc. They're only available to contributors, people who, at the end of this year, as of the beginning of the year, are going to be people who are giving $4 a month or more. And there will be plenty of opportunities for people to donate one time, make purchases one time, or donate on a regular basis. Let me go ahead and take this off the screen. But I want to get as many people as possible. Oh, focus. There you go. We want to get as many people as possible to volunteer with the Church of Korihor. And at the very least, to go onto our website and in the social media groups and in certain tools that I've been developing in the background that I'm hoping to launch pretty soon here. It's been quite a trial to figure out the technology side of this. So a lot of this is going to be pretty low tech for a while. But basically, I'm developing some tools that will allow people to volunteer without having to join the Church of Korihor, without having to give money to the Church of Korihor. That people who feel passionate about fighting for the marginalized people in our world and making their lives more worth living, that you can volunteer with the Church of Korihor and you can help us in a variety of things, especially if you already have skills, if you already have contacts. Hi, Bob. And if you already have contacts, if you have skills, if you have the passion. And maybe a lot of you out there are going to be people who already worked in this space and now can't find a job in it anymore. Okay? If you can donate some of your time, we'll take it. If you're out there and you don't have experience, but you happen to be in the fortunate position to have some money, I am going to ask, rather than, unless you feel passionate about helping, making donations to the Church of Korihor and supporting us in our work, I am going to be writing tax receipts for those of you out there who are in a position to support our volunteers, to just go ahead and give those donations directly to them. Give to their Venmo, give to their Cash App. Don't send it to the church, send it to them directly, and then tell us what you sent, and I will write you a tax receipt so that you can claim it on your taxes, especially if you're in a position to give a significant amount of money. But frankly, if we get a lot of people who can just give $1, give $2, and don't give it to me. I mean, if you want to give money to me to help me, I'm not in a position to turn it away. But if you want to help, and even if you don't have money to give, if you can give a can of soup, if you can give a can of baby formula, if you can give a blanket, if you can give a sleeping bag to somebody in need, tell us who you gave it to. I'll write you a tax receipt for it. And it'll be a donation to the Church of Korihor. It'll be a donation to our mission, to our work. And if you can go out and organize for the union, and you have been, and you're willing to pass a background check, because I am still going to require people to pass background checks. If you don't know, there are a lot of reasons why a church these days, I feel more than ever before, should be requiring everybody who works in official capacity for the church to pass a criminal background check. But in any event, if you're willing to submit to a background check, if you're willing to commit to our clergy standards and to learn those standards, even if it's just to attend a couple hours of training so that we can make sure that you are aware of what's going to be required of you while you're operating in official capacity of the Church of Korihor. We need people who will go out and work. And if it's a question of that we can't pay you to do it, I feel you. I wish I had the money to pay every one of you and to get you to go out there and do this and to compensate you for your time. There's nothing I hate more than asking people to give uncompensated labor. But I also am not in a position to turn you away if you are willing to give of your time and help. So on the Church of Korihor's website at korihor.org, we're going to be making availability for people to organize and to talk and to collect. And my intention is to start advertising and collecting the information of people who are in need, and making sure that their private information is not accessible to anybody but people who, again, have passed background checks and have signed the documents to make sure that not only that they're keeping the church safe, but that they're keeping the people that we serve safe. Cool, Bob. Let's talk. And to make sure that people are safe, and that's done the safest way possible, to start collecting donations, whether that is, like I said, food, blankets, money, and rather than filtering them through the church, we're going to have you give it in kind donation or donation directly from person to person and start helping people. The Church of Korihor could be the one church that doesn't require you to join our church to get help. Doesn't require you to give us money or commit to give us money in the future or to have given us money in the past. Who doesn't require you to give us money so that we can somehow, profit from holding it with interest and earning interest off of it. Let us be the one organization that just says, if you're out there doing the work with us, you're part of the movement. And if you are out there looking to be available and can be available to help facilitate that you have the skills, even if I can't give you a salary, I can give you an opportunity to put up your Zelle, your Venmo, your PayPal, whatever you have, and say, if you want to help me in my work at the Church of Korihor, you can send me cash, you can send me money, you can send me donations, you can give me a car, you can give me tires for my car, you can put gas in my car, or whatever it is. If you can help me, it'd be great. I'll take all the help I can get. And then all we need to do is just streamline this process of making sure that you or I or the church, somebody is making sure that the form is filled out on the website to make sure that person can get a tax receipt. And then we go out there and we use the power that is only available in this country to churches to go out and spread the message that we are in this together. You don't have to be an atheist to be a part of it, or an agnostic. We are godless people on a mission, but part of our mission is to collect people who are friends of the movement. You don't have to be an atheist or agnostic like me. You don't, in order to be a part of this. We need help. Let us be the people that a mother with a small child can call and say, can you help me out with a can of formula? If the Church of Corridor had revenue, I would say, yeah, let's buy up all the cans of formula, or let's go out there and manufacture cans of formula, whatever it takes. But we don't have that kind of money. So what we can do instead is to use the tax code that exists to empower those people to get help from other people who are able to give it. And the only thing I need from in a volunteer capacity is people who understand that there is a sacred trust being placed in your hands if you are asked to help us. If you are asked to help us to facilitate moving donations from individuals to other individuals. And we'll make mistakes. Like I said, we will fail. Remember, I said 1 year ago almost, I will fail. And I will start again. I'll do better. I'll fail forward. Now it's us. We will fail. We will make mistakes. We will learn from it. We will admit to our mistakes, and we will do better. And there will be danger involved in it, because there are people who are interested in making sure that churches aren't doing what the Church of Corridor will be doing. The fact of the matter is, there's nothing illegal about it. And if it's our religious purpose, our spiritual purpose as a spiritual community, if it's part of our worship to say there are no gods, and there shall be no kings, and there shall be no barons who can step on the people and hurt our people, except that we will step up to protect them, and we will step up to feed them, and we will step up to get them out of the cold. And why? Because we have each other. That's what the Church of Corridor is about. And so from now on, part of my and our calling, those who care to join in with me, is labor activism, is also activism for protecting marginalized people, including, as has always been the case, LGBTQIA plus people, BIPOC people. Well, BIPOC is people. And people who are victims of domestic violence, and working class Americans. That is a lot of people. But I am not intimidated, because I believe that you are out there. I may be wrong. It won't be the first time. I believe you're out there. And I believe that even if you only have a few hours every week to give to helping us, or a few dollars to help somebody, or a few items of non-perishable food items to help, that you want to, and that there's enough resources out there that we can make a real difference in people's lives, and we can be an active part of seizing power back to the people, because there are no gods, because there is no God giving us direction and purpose. This direction and purpose is born in us, and I feel it. I believe in this. I believe in you. Those of you who are out there live now, those of you who are out there in the future, and see this in the future, I believe in us enough that I'll stake my life on. We can do this, and we can change things And one day, if we have failed, people will remember the Church of Korihor failed trying. It could be, I hope it is, that the Church of Korihor will outlive me by decades, maybe more. I hope so. But if we were to shutter our doors tomorrow, if we were forced out tomorrow, what will they say we did? What will they say the Church of Korihor was about? When somebody says that godless people have no purpose, that godless people have no values, and people will say there was the Church of Korihor, what will they say? For my money, for my life, for the very blood in my veins, for the breath in my lungs, we were for the people. We were for working people in a world and a time when the government turned their backs on them. And so did the churches. This godless church pulled what resources we had together and pulled the hearts of human beings to each other. And we went out there and we fought to help people and to pull people out of poverty and to pull people away from the brink of suicide when no one else was there for them, when their families turned their backs on them. So the Church of Korihor was there. And if we fail, we're going to fail doing that. And then I will never, one day of my life, be embarrassed of that failure. Because I will say I failed, yes, but I failed doing the right thing when no one else had the courage. And I found people who were ready and willing to do it with me. And it'll be the proudest moment of my life every day to say I failed at that. But until we fail, we're going to succeed. Until we ultimately fail, we're going to learn from our mistakes and we're going to do better. We're already doing it. And so when people say, oh, I know that church, don't they just go out and collect blankets from their neighbors and go and put them on people who are homeless? We did do that. We do that. And it is not all we do. As of now, it is not all we do. If you are in a position to fill out a strike card, I would encourage you, go to the general strike. Go and look up the general strike by Google. The actual address is generalstrikeus.com. If you are in a position and you are not already a member of a labor union, I would encourage you to consider organizing your fellow workers in a labor union. If you need help, reach out to us. We'll help you. We'll find the way. And if you are not in an industry where there is a labor union, I would encourage you to join a union, or if you're in a state where they virtually punish labor unions, like Utah, you can also reach out to a union like the International Workers of the World, the Wobblies, and join up with their union and support them, because they're out there doing this work too, and have been longer than any other union in the history of the world, the Wobblies. I would encourage you to stand with union brothers, because it was the union that built this country. I'm going to play the song again, American Union. And I want you to really consider this. I am aware that union, as I'm using it in the lyrics of this song, is referring to two kinds of union. One is the union of states that are the United States. The other one is labor unions. As you listen to it, I would ask you to consider this profound thing that occurred to me when I decided to write this hymn, was that at the end of the day, there really isn't a difference. When this country was built on the backs of slaves, when this country was committed to displacing the indigenous peoples of this continent so that white people would have dominance on this continent. It was not born here on this continent. That hate, that oppression was born in Europe. And though it took America longer to figure out that we were hurting ourselves by hurting people on the basis of race or ethnicity or gender identity or sexual orientation, before we as a collective society had figured out that was hurting people, there were those people. They were here. Their voices were marginalized. Their voices were repressed. Their identities were stripped from them by a system that preferred rich white men, including rich white men in England, including rich white men in France, including rich white men in Spain, and the descendants of those rich white men here on this continent. They would never have built the nation that gave rise to Joe Hill, that gave rise to Paul Robeson and Woody Guthrie, that gave rise to the movement of socialism that was born first and foremost in America. That never would have happened if it weren't for the fact that ordinary people said the king is nothing more than an entitled little rich boy across the ocean. His barons and his parliament are nothing more than entitled rich people who think that they can push us around, and that there would be no limits before we push back. And when there was still slavery in this country, I'm not saying there wasn't, and when that slavery was brutal, I'm not saying it wasn't, the seeds were planted that gave rise to that same union of ordinary working people to come together and say, I won't support a system that enslaves human beings. And if it's not today, it'll be tomorrow. And we will fight and fight until it's done. And while some people will give credit to all the founding fathers believing that they all believed in that, it isn't true. It isn't true. Even people who spoke about it, who declared it, like Thomas Jefferson, owned 1,000 slaves. The man owned 1,000 human beings. But the movement of people saying kings don't rule where ordinary people respect themselves and respect each other. The clergy will not rule. Not many of you were able to attend the canonization event. I did notice. I have been doing a lot of research into the documents surrounding Thomas Jefferson's crafting of a document known as the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom. And this man who wrote the Declaration of Independence, who came up with this, who put pen to paper for these words, that all men are created equal and entitled by their creator to certain inalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That this man himself hated slavery, participated in it, took advantage of it in perhaps the worst way possible, but did hate it. And among the other things he hated he was asked by a French diplomat a series of questions about Virginia that became a book, the only book published by Jefferson in his lifetime, his notes on Virginia. A series of questions that he answered. And one of them was about the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom that he fought for 10 years, fought for a decade, wrote it when he was in the state legislature, fought to get it passed and failed to get it passed when he was the governor of the state of Virginia, and then continued to advocate for it when his friend James Madison became governor of Virginia while he was minister to France, then of course, and then eventually vice president of the United States, and then ultimately president of the United States. By then it had been passed. Fought to get the Virginia Statute for Religious Freedom passed. Fought tooth and nail to pass this document that was the forerunner to the First Amendment. And when he was explaining to this French diplomat why he fought so hard, he said, what people will, he effectively said, what people will forget is that those of us who lived in this country when we were colonies of Britain saw as the church was given power, the Episcopalian or Anglican Church, the Church of England, had power to craft laws for our people. And they included things like, I hope somebody out there will hear this, that the church required us to pass a law saying that if a boat came to our shores that had Quakers on it, we were to turn them away. And here's a man who is as far from a Quaker as you can imagine. In fact, he's as far from an Anglican as you can imagine. And said that he fought for religious freedom when the church tried to convince them to turn people away because of their religious differences, and in an effort to preserve the integrity of the religious community and the culture of the people who are already in Virginia. I hope somebody hears that and understands why that's important to know right now. Right now, that matters. This country's founding by very flawed human beings, was born out of frustration for how the kings and the barons and the wealthy, rich, connected, spoiled rich boys in Europe could use the church to convince people and sway their hearts into hatred for others in order to consolidate power and wealth to themselves, while people, ordinary working class people, were sold on that you were just doing your duty to God. And it was those people, not the Jeffersons, the Adams, the Franklins, not the Freemasons even. It was those working class people who took up arms and said, no, we won't do it again. We won't put up with it. We gave them every chance. If you've ever read the Declaration of Independence, it is a list written by Jefferson on account of everybody, saying we gave the king a chance. We told him what we expected. We gave him every opportunity to prove that he was not a tyrant, and he failed. And this was a time we learned this word in American history. I'm convinced, at least I did, and thinking, what is a tyrant? Oh, that's a king. Okay, so a tyrant is a king. Those are two words for the same thing. It pissed the Mad King George off to no end. It made him downright furious that Jefferson labeled him a tyrant before the whole world and showed exactly why. And among the lists of reasons why I hope somebody will hear me when I say this, among the list of complaints that Jefferson put on behalf of everyone, and that all those men signed that document, when Benjamin Franklin turned to the few who were there, because they weren't all in the same room, turned to the few who were there and said, "Gentlemen, we must now all hang together, or sure as hell we will all hang separately." One of the complaints that they had signed onto that document was he, the tyrant, King George, takes our people and arrests them without cause and sends them away to parts unknown, where we know nothing about what actually happens to them. That was the No Kings movement. That was the No Kings movement in 1776. Why should it be different now? That was the movement that gave rise to the Emancipation. That was the movement that brought immigrants and people of color and white people together into a labor movement in the early 20th century, in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, that created labor unions and that took power back from the new kings and the new barons, who, yes, once again, went to religious organizations like the Salvation Army, like the Roman Catholic Church, like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and all variations of these churches, and told them, if you want our tithes to keep coming in to your storehouse, you are going to sell these human beings on that. To oppose the corporations that are benevolent enough to give them jobs is to oppose God. You will sell them on that, or you will see the money dry up. It was godless people like Joe Hill who stood up. Was not the first, and he will not be the last. The union, the labor union, the union that fought to end slavery, and the union that stood up to tyranny is one union. Known by many names, with many different organizations and many industries, we are one union of human beings who would not turn against each other, who would stand up for each other. And we are a godless union. And I'm proud of us for that. Amen.
Take my hand, come join our strike. From Boston shot to dawn's early light, from Lexington to Tripoli, our fathers died, the Union to see. A common voice, a common fight, a brighter tomorrow, however dark the night. It's the Union that raised our banner, it's the Union, the future's hammer, it's the Union that made you union that raised our banner. It's the union, the future's hammer. It's the union that made you and me. It's the union that makes us free. Makes us free. If we all strike, Joe Hill survives. They won't break us. Stand side by side, I'll stand with you. Come strike with me and our union.